Welcome back. This is part 3 of our shoulder series. I'm Pat with Suarez Physical Therapy. If you remember, in part 1 we talked about pain at the front of the shoulder. Part 2 we talked about pain at the top of the shoulder. And today in part 3 we're going to talk about pain at the outside of the shoulder. Now this pain is a little bit more diffuse. It's a little bit more of an achiness at the outside of that shoulder. And today we're going to talk about why that might be happening and what we can do to mitigate that pain. A lot of what we're going to be talking about today will refer back to some of the points we made in the first 2 parts of this series. If you haven't gotten a chance to check those out, go ahead and check those out. We're going to be referring back to those in this video. Alright, so if you guys like the content, you like the information that we're providing, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, share the video, check back in from new videos, and leave a comment below if you have any questions or want any questions to be answered. Thanks. So when we're talking about pain at the outside of the shoulder, we're talking, like I said, a little bit more of that diffuse achiness. And what might be happening here is you might actually have an injury to the rotator cuff, whether it's a strain, a partial tear, something along those lines. That diffuse pain is a pain referral for that rotator cuff. So the tendons of that rotator cuff attach high up on your shoulder. And when you have an injury there, it's going to give you this achiness here. And this is a little bit different than the pains we were talking about in part 1 and part 2 of our series. So this might be an active injury that's going on. And what we want to do is we really want to try to avoid things that are really aggravating it, because that can lead to the injury lasting longer or becoming a little more problematic. And what we want to do is we want to start strengthening, start putting a little force through it at a comfortable range of motion. So some of the exercises that we did in part 1 will still apply here, but we might not do them with as much resistance, or we might do them in a more controlled range of motion. So while there might be an active injury going on within the shoulder here, we still want to keep that strength up, because the best thing for it is gonna be to maintain that strength. As that active injury progresses, it will want to take away from your muscle strength, because you're not going to be using it as much. It's going to be achy. It's going to be aggravated when you're holding it out, when you're moving it forward and back. You know, if you're an electrician, a plumber, anything like that, where your arm is going to be up, that's going to continue to aggravate that injury. So what we want to do is we want to exercise within a range of motion and a low load that doesn't aggravate that injury. We still want to put a little force through it so that we can continue to strengthen, but we don't want to exacerbate those symptoms. So that's what we're going to show you today. We're going to show you some exercises that you can do in a shorter range to help begin to strengthen that rotator cuff, so that that pain comes down.
How you doing, guys? So we have a little guest today. This is Luca Gill. He's going to be staring at Patrick the whole time here, but I'm on daddy duty today, so we had to shoot in order to make sure that we deliver you guys the last part of our shoulder series. So whatever we got to do here.
It's our special guest.
Yes, Luca will be joining us. All right, guys.
All right, so today, like I mentioned, we're talking about pain at the outside of the shoulder. So we're talking about that diffuse pain that kind of comes out on the outside, kind of the cap of that shoulder, and how that can be related to the rotator cuff. So what I mentioned before, if you want to spin that way a little bit, is that might actually indicate that you have a rotator cuff injury going on, whether it's a strain, partial tear, any one of those kind of things. Those muscles in the back, those rotator cuff muscles that sit on the back of your shoulder blade, one down here, one up here, their tendons come out to the outside of that shoulder to help it move. So those muscles can be referring pain to the outside of that shoulder, especially when you're trying to do things where you're reaching out in front, where you're reaching up and you have to hold that arm up, and those muscles are asked to keep the ball on the socket. That's when you'll start getting a bigger ache, a bigger pain through there. When you sleep on it, either you're on it or you're on the other side, you'll be aching with it. That just kind of like almost like a toothache type of feeling in the outside of your shoulder. And so what we want to do, like I mentioned before, is include in our strength training low load, low range of motion, things that are tolerable and that don't aggravate that injury. We got Travis in that sideline position. He's going to bring that arm up here, and we talked about this one in our first video, in the part 1 with pain at the front of the shoulder. So all he's going to do is he's going to do an external rotation coming up here, right? That wrist neutral. And he's going to work in a range of motion that is comfortable for him. So if he's getting pain up here, then I'm just going to limit him from his belly about parallel with the floor, right? And we're always emphasizing that shoulder back, engaging that shoulder blade, and we're going right here. And he's going to do that for that range of motion, and then come back down with no resistance to start. And And until he gets comfortable there, then he can start opening up that range of motion. Now with this injury, it also might be painful to get up overhead when you're standing and working against gravity. So what we want to do is take that out of the equation. We'll have Travis go straight arm. So you're going to keep this arm on the same plane, and you're going to lift it up above your head. So he's going to come up this way. So we're working on getting overhead, but we're taking that gravity component out of it when you're in a standing position. So this should be an easier motion to get through. So let's limit your motion. Let's say you have, it's a little painful when you get to the top. So we want you to stop before you hit that painful spot and then come back down. So we want to get your strength up in the ranges of motion that are comfortable for you, so that as you get stronger, we can continue to test those ranges of motion. All right, so those are two easy ones in a sideline position that can start to work on your rotator cuff. And then what we want to do is work on the foundation of that rotator cuff. Make sure your scapula is nice and strong. So what we're going to do next is we're going to show a couple of exercises that you can do on your stomach for shoulder blade strength in order to give the rotator cuff a little bit of a break, but continue to develop your strength to get out of your pain. So a lot of the exercises we've shown you have been from part 1 and part 2 of this series. And again, we've just lowered the load, lowered the range of motion so that we're not aggravating that injury. One of the progressions from these is to do a standing banded external rotation here. So we've got Travis set up. He's got the band at about the same height if you were to bend that elbow at 90 degrees. And all he's going to do is going to rotate out against that resistance, okay? So I'm going to have you flip around for me real quick, Travis, here. And what we want to make sure of as he does that is we want to make sure that that shoulder blade gets engaged when he goes to rotate. So he's got it now in that right hand. So we want to bring that shoulder blade back and in a little bit. And he's going to rotate out. And as he rotates out, he's going to let that elbow will want to come off his side a little bit. And that's okay. As long as it's not going too far out, we're straightening that elbow. As he rotates, it's okay for that elbow to pop out. And what we want to really focus on is rotating through that shoulder and not crunching down. So Travis, if you crunch down, show him kind of, yeah. So see how Travis now, he's scrunching down on that right side using his lat. We don't want that. We want to make sure we're up tall, shoulder blade is engaged, and you're just getting that rotation from that shoulder. Perfect. So this is a good progression. It's still below shoulder height, adds a little resistance. Good progression for your rotator cuff strengthening. I would use this one after doing the one on the table, and you can use some weights with that one on the table, but after that one feels pretty comfortable, then you can go to the standing one with the band.
About how many repetitions would you recommend?
So from a rep scheme, it depends on how we're feeling. Initially, when we're moving into a new exercise and it's a potential injury, I like to keep the reps low and the sets higher. So I would do about 5 or 6 reps, take a little bit of break, take inventory, see how it feels, and then go again. This allows us to prevent overdoing it, doing too much and getting sore afterward. And my general rules are, if it's painful while you're doing it and then you stop and it's still painful, then we got to back off of that exercise. That exercise is too much. And then if you do it and it's a little bit sore afterward, I'm okay with that, but you probably overdid it. So either we lower the resistance a little bit or we lower the reps. That's generally how I operate.
Now, when you say pain, what kind of pain? Because there's the burning sensation or a sharp pain. What pain are you like, okay, I gotta stop this?
So if you get sharp pains, we want to stop. But if the pain that you normally feel, if you're feeling that and it's increasing, then we want to stop with that too. If you're getting almost like a fatigue or that the muscle is working hard, I'm okay with that. I'm okay with the muscle working a little bit of muscle soreness. What I don't want is sharp pain or an increase in the pain that you are currently feeling. All right, so that's part 3 of the series. I know it was a little bit shorter, but that's because it really takes into account part 1 and part 2. So if you haven't seen those, go back, check those out, comment on them. If you have questions, let us know. And in this one, the big takeaway for me is that you might actually have a rotator cuff injury when you're feeling this type of pain out here. And so modifying the load, modifying the range of motion, allowing that to heal a little bit, but continuing to strengthen in pain-free ranges of motion is going to be the best thing for it.
And at what point do you actually stop doing the exercise? Say you're at the gym, you're by yourself, and it hurts to do something overhead, or it hurts to do a scaption with a dumbbell. Now, would you recommend just reducing the weight or literally just stopping that movement?
I would first recommend reducing the weight or reducing the range of motion, and if that doesn't help, then I would recommend stopping and going to see your fitness professional or your clinician to help you kind of diagnose and figure out what's going wrong in that shoulder. And then from there, you guys can develop a plan, a better plan to continue to get strong, but avoid aggravating that shoulder.
And if you're being asked to lift a heavy weight that you don't feel comfortable lifting because you know that range of motion hurts, make sure that you're not afraid to speak up, all right? Don't do something that's going to add more pain, and try not to gut through any type of exercise and fight through the pain. There's never anything good that comes from that.
Good. So if you guys like the information that you got here, please feel free to subscribe, comment, questions, anything like that. If you have some other topics that you'd like to see, please let us know.
Thanks, guys. Say bye, buddy. Say bye.
Bye.
Bye.